Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel where we dive into critical issues in education, history and other topics. Our topic is empowering education and designing and implementing sustainable digital change framework for future-ready institutions. Yes, future-ready institutions. With the rapid pace of technological advancement, it is more important than ever that our education system is ready to adapt and thrive. Therefore, in this video, we'll discuss the current state of digital transformation in education and explore some of the key components for sustaining a digital change framework. And of course, we will explore a few strategies. So if you're an educator, school administrator, policymaker, or just someone interested in the future of education, you don't want to miss this. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more insightful content on education and digital transformation. I am exploring technology and putting my thoughts further because I know there is a wonderful future ahead. So let's get started. Let's go right on into the video. It is important that as you plan a way forward for digital sustenance, you have to consider what framework you're using within the education system that you're in. You must ensure that there are long-term benefits while maximizing the disruptions that will take place within the system. In doing so, we have to understand how to use the resources that we have efficiently. Most recently, we have seen the move as it relates to the transformation with language learning models. There are other things coming on the horizon, and I can tell you that the future looks bright, but it is going to take a lot. Therefore, we have to think how we're going to do this transformation in a systematic way. Let me also say that there are going to be challenges in these transformation processes. We must also understand as these changes take place, we're going to have resistance. We're going to have infrastructure limitations and also gaps in digital literacy. Therefore, we must understand that the change is not going to be easy. So we have to approach it within a systematic fashion. Now, what are some of the components for sustainable digital change framework? Because that is necessary for what I've just said. First, you have to have strategic vision and leadership. It is important to have a clear vision of the digital transformation that you want. So many times that individuals will take over the realm of pushing digital technology, they do not come from a critical lens. I think many of them come from a hype. Within that context too, you have to understand the role of leadership driving and setting the expectations. They must allocate resources and foster a culture of innovation and collaboration. I would say a sustainable digital framework cannot exist in silos. You have to have the systems talking to each other and people collaborating. And of course, you have to have a culture that is innovative and collaborative. People must share their ideas and not walk away with the ideas taken from others to create their own innovation. You have to understand also, as you look at sustaining this digital framework, the need to have inclusive stakeholder engagement. When you look at what is required to have an inclusive stakeholder agreement, you're looking at including educators, students, parents, and staff in the digital change process. So often, institutions go across and have these changes and don't allow the stakeholders to be involved. Within that sort of sustainable digital framework too that I'm talking about for change, you must understand the need for effective communication and collaboration among stakeholders. This can foster a sense of ownership and shared responsibility. Too often I see people chasing down the road on a digital sort of initiative without giving consideration to all those who are supporting the digital change initiative. We must understand the need for collaboration when working together. And as we're thinking about the issue of sustaining digital change within a framework that we want to design, you have to think about digital infrastructure and technology. You must assess current infrastructure that you have in your institution and technology, and you must go through an audit process where you're going to say, what do I have, resources, and the capabilities of these resources. You should also identify sustainable and scalable solutions that align with your institutions. Because if this is not taking place, then the digital transformation will not be a continuous process and you will not be able to adapt to future technological advances. For example, let's look at VR. A lot of times we have VR technology being deployed. Many of them are not scalable. And if we are to say, all right, we're going to use a specific headset for a purpose, then we go the wrong direction. One of the things that I find really interesting is that there's a need for capacity building and professional development. We must enhance the digital literacy skills among the educators and staff who will be using this technology. And this can be done by having programs, professional development programs, that is, workshop, and of course, ongoing support. We make the assumptions many times because someone is introduced to that technology, they're going to know it. Remember, you have to practice certain technologies to be able to use them functionally. You might have these introductory courses, but you have to consider how you're going to be able to guide those individuals using this form of technology. Another point that you must consider in scaling a digital framework, you must consider and promote continuous learning and growth. There must be opportunities for individuals to learn about these technologies and access resources. There must be mentorship and, of course, networking opportunities outside the institution. For example, going to conferences. Going to conferences allow individuals to see what others are doing in various places and also help your framework to be stronger and more rigorous, because that's so important. Within any framework, there must be a policy and, of course, regulation guiding the framework. You should review existing policies if you have. If you don't, you have to ask others about them from other institutions and get that done. You should also identify the gaps that could hinder you in providing this digital framework necessary. When developing new policies that support digital change, you must address the various gaps. And one of the things I'd like to also mention that you must use data to drive decision making. It cannot be, I feel good about that technology, I like that technology. Because if you don't use data to promote it, then the elements that you're doing are going to be somewhat subjective. And also within that, data allows us to really drive a culture of continuous improvement. When we think about the implementation of strategies for a sustainable digital change framework, we have to understand that there needs to be a phased implementation. I always like the idea of piloting projects and doing change gradually to test the new technology and the approaches. And of course, this allows for adjustment to take place and we can refine before broader implementation. That is so important because when you're thinking about scaling, you really have to consider that. We have to understand for sustainable digital change, there must be scaling. And we have to take this gradually. And we have to ensure that we roll out these sort of changes that we need with the resources and support necessary because we want a smooth transition. I would say there's also the importance of collaborating with partners. We have to leverage the experts. You can't be having, for example, a VR initiative when you have not really asked the expert. You're going to become an expert at the same time you're embedding that sort of framework in about VR. No, you should collaborate with a technology person, collaborate with the individuals who have really been in depth in that field. And it brings me to another point. We have to build supportive networks of partners that share the knowledge, resources, and of course best practices. At times, many technologies will come out and we'll buy the technology. One of the things I've always reflected on is the issue of whiteboards going into classroom with the projectors. Once the projector bulb went, that was the end of that whiteboard. So I want to say that you have to ensure that funding is sustainable. Exploring funding opportunities and financial models that will support your long-term framework is important. Because for sustaining that change, it will require funding such as grants, partnerships, and innovative streaming revenues. Let me also say that we must maximize return on investment. So we have to be very careful when evaluating the cost. I'm at a standpoint now as it relates to VR because I realize one of the biggest obstacles that I've seen is that VR content is expensive. So if we go down the technology road of saying, all right, we're going to develop VR content, we're thinking about thousands of dollars to budgets that could exceed 100,000. So we have to maximize, and that is where I think about the issue of pedagogy and technology. So we have to think about what we're going to use it for and how we can scale it to maximize the use of participants. Would it make sense making something that will only be used by 10 students or maybe the whole student population? So we have to think about these things. There are several barriers that can limit a digital transformation framework for change. And some of these barriers are resistance to change. Sometimes faculty members and others are not really interested in change. We have to find strategies to do that. We have to understand the root cause of the resistance, because there must be something that is causing that. Within the context of AI, some people might not take that up because that might be connected to job loss, lack of skill, or some attachment to traditional practices. Like some people still like that 1 hour, 3 hour talk. And once you understand the context, we can develop the strategies for overcoming these sort of resistance. When we talk about resistance to change in a transformational framework, we must consider communication practices. We must address the concerns. We must provide adequate training and support, and of course, involve stakeholders. There are many times when we have to navigate technical issues. We have to identify and mitigate risk associated with implementing new technologies, and this is so important, such as data breaches, system failures, compatible issues, as I mentioned earlier with VR. And of course, this is done by implementing an assessment and, of course, being proactive as it relates to that. Another factor that we must consider as we roll the framework out for change is that we ensure equitable access and inclusivity. We must identify the digital divide among students and staff, and this could be connected to technology, connectivity, or their digital skills in order to have them within our framework. Let me also say that we must promote inclusive digital learning environments by designing accessible content, because this is one of the greatest issues that I'm having at this point in time, and provide the necessary accommodations when necessary. Within our context too, I want to see that we must foster culture of inclusivity and respect for all learners, and I mean all learners. After all, I would say it's about equality, teaching someone the same way you'd want to be taught, and that's important. As I conclude, let me say that it is important for a sustainable digital change framework in education institutions to have the potential of benefiting teaching, learning, and preparing students for a digital future. I want to say to everyone listening to take action to be part of the digital transformation journey within your institution. It is important because without this, it's not going to be an easy road for you. We have a shared responsibility in reality to ensure that these digital transformations that are taking place across educational institutions are successful. Let me end by saying the next 5 years is going to be nothing that you have seen before. So in order for you to be ready, I want you really to consider the need to have a sustainable digital change framework within your institution. One that's flexible enough but rigid enough to stand through any event and deliver what students need. It should be able to adapt to emerging technologies, and of course, it should lead to better learning outcomes and enhance the student experience. That's all for now.